Welcome to the Military Breakdown podcast. We're diving into some really interesting developments around the U.S. and Panama defense relationship. It seems like there's quite a bit more happening than just standard diplomatic handshakes.
Absolutely. Looking at this, the recent defense agreement signed during the U.S. Defense Secretary's visit, it's more than symbolic. It suggests a real deepening of ties.
Especially given Panama's location, right? That canal is just so critical.
Exactly. It's a major global choke point for trade, obviously, but also for, military logistics, moving naval assets quickly between oceans. That's key.
Okay, so let's break down this new defense agreement. What's at the core of it? What really stands out?
The headline item really is this enhanced military cooperation. And specifically, the agreement gives the U.S. first and free access through the Panama Canal for its warships and auxiliary vessels.
First and free. Sounds significant. What does that actually translate to operationally? Why is that such a big deal?
Well, first means they get priority passage. If there's a crisis or just for routine deployments, U.S. ships don't have to wait. They go to the front of the line.
Less delay.
Right. And free means just that no tolls. It's not necessarily about saving huge amounts of money, but it removes a potential bureaucratic snag and, underlines that privileged access.
So it really greases the wheels for the U.S. Navy moving between the Atlantic and Pacific.
Precisely. It boosts strategic flexibility enormously. And the fact that the signing involved the Panamanian president, Jose Raul Molino, and the public security minister, Frank Abrego, alongside the U.S. Defense Secretary, that shows serious high-level buy-in.
Got it. And beyond just ship passage, there was more to it. A memorandum of understanding, I think.
Yes, an MOU on cooperative security activities. This broadens things out considerably. We're talking joint training exercises, getting forces used to working together.
Okay, interoperability.
Exactly. Plus humanitarian missions, building goodwill, providing aid. And it also covers temporary deployments of U.S. personnel and equipment in Panama.
And wasn't there something about canal security specifically?
Yeah, a joint declaration focusing just on securing the canal itself. It signals, a united commitment to protecting that vital waterway. So it's a layered agreement, much more than just transit rights.
Now, something that really jumped out was this U.S. proposal, or maybe suggestion, about reestablishing a U.S. military presence, reviving old bases like Howard Air Force Base. That sounds like a major step.
It does. And the context, according to the materials, is clearly linked to rising U.S. concerns about China's influence in the region, particularly around the canal.
So the U.S. thinking was a more visible presence could act as a counterweight and enhance security cooperation.
That seems to be the rationale presented. Using those former installations, Howard and Rodman Naval Station, would certainly be a visible sign. And of course, there's the whole history of the canal zone looming in the background.
But Panama's reaction was not receptive?
Not at all. It was reportedly swift and firm, no. They rejected the idea of reestablishing permanent U.S. bases.
Why the strong pushback, even while they're agreeing to closer cooperation in other ways?
It really hits a nerve regarding sovereignty. The 1977 Torrijos-Carter treaties, handing over the canal, that's fundamental to modern Panamanian identity.
National pride.
Immense national pride. So having permanent foreign bases again, that would be seen as undermining those treaties, a step backward. They welcome cooperation, clearly, but not at the expense of that hard-won sovereignty. It's a very fine line they're walking.
Okay, so no permanent bases. But the agreement does grant the U.S. access to certain Panamanian facilities. How does that work in practice? It sounds like more than just theoretical access.
It definitely is. The U.S. has authorized access to operate from 3 key spots. Panama Pacifico International Airport, that's the old Howard Air Force Base.
Right.
Vasco Núñez de Balboa Naval Base, formerly Rodman Naval Station.
Okay.
And Cristobal Colon Naval Air Base.
Yeah.
Panama insists these aren't U.S. bases. They maintain control. But yes, U.S. personnel and equipment are deploying there.
And we're seeing this happen now. What kind of activity?
Oh, yeah. The sources mention over 1,000 U.S. troops participating in recent joint exercises.
Yeah.
There's been a deployment of a U.S. Marine Infantry company.
A whole company. Okay.
And maybe most significantly, 4 F-18 fighter jets are currently operating out of Panama Pacifico.
F-18s. Wow.
Plus, looking ahead, the USNS Comfort, the hospital ship, is scheduled for a humanitarian mission there. And they're planning to bring back the big Panamax exercise in 2026.
Panamax, right, the multinational canal defense exercise. Bringing that back is a statement.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
All these things point to a real, tangible increase in operational cooperation on the ground.
Let's focus on those F-18s for a moment. They're from the MFA 312, the Checkerboards, Marine Squadron. Why is their presence singled out? What makes that deployment particularly noteworthy?
Well, having daily fighter jet operations FA-18C Hornets flying out of Panama Pacifico, that's a major marker of this renewed U.S. defense posture in Central America.
It's not just a temporary visit.
Exactly. A forward-deployed, combat-capable Marine Air Squadron operating consistently from Panama. That shows a significant, readily available U.S. capability right there in the region. It signals a sustained commitment and really pushes that interoperability aspect.
And the checkerboards, VMFA 312, they have quite a history, don't they?
They certainly do. A highly decorated Marine Corps squadron, part of Marine Aircraft Group 31, 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing. They've got a long combat record, known for being skilled and deployable.
So sending them underscores the seriousness.
I'd say so. It shows the level of capability the U.S. is committing to these joint operations. And the timing, coinciding with the 2025 Central America Security Conference, CENSEC, being held in Panama City, that doesn't seem coincidental. It looks like a very deliberate effort to bolster regional security ties.
What can these FA-18C Hornets actually do? What kind of capabilities are we talking about?
They're very versatile aircraft, multi-role. For air-to-air combat, they carry things like the AIM-120 AMRAAM, which is a beyond visual range missile, and the AIM-9 Sidewinder for closer engagements.
Okay, serious air defense capability.
Definitely. And for hitting ground targets, they've got a whole toolkit, AGM-65 Maverick missiles, JDAMs. Those are the GPS-guided bombs, very accurate.
Right, the smart bombs.
And laser-guided bombs, too. So they can handle everything from air superiority missions to protecting troops on the ground to striking specific targets. Their presence significantly boosts the combined air power available there.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit. We mentioned China earlier. It seems impossible to talk about this renewed U.S. engagement without considering that angle. How significant are U.S. concerns about China's role near the canal?
They seem very significant. It's a major backdrop to all of this. The U.S. has become increasingly vocal about China's growing economic and potentially strategic footprint globally and certainly in Latin America.
And the specific concern in Panama relates to the ports.
Yes, the fact that Chinese companies like C.K. Hutchison operate major port terminals at both the Atlantic and Pacific entrances to the canal, that's seen as strategically sensitive.
Why? What's the specific worry for the U.S.? Is it just about business?
It goes beyond economic competition. The fear is that control over that critical infrastructure could potentially be used for intelligence gathering, maybe monitoring ship movements, U.S. Navy or commercial.
I see. Eyes and ears in a critical spot.
Potentially. And there's also the concern about coercive leverage, that this presence could give China influence over Panama or even be used as leverage against the U.S. in some future scenario. We saw the Trump administration really push allies in the region to be wary of Chinese investments for these reasons.
Has Panama itself done anything that suggests it shares some of these U.S. concerns or is at least responding to them?
There have been some interesting moves, yes.
Yeah.
Panama withdrew from China's Belt and Road Initiative, which was a pretty big signal.
Right, that got some attention.
And there are reports they've started audits on contracts with Chinese firms already operating there. So when you put those actions alongside this deepening defense cooperation with the U.S., it suggests Panama might be recalibrating its position a bit in this growing U.S.-China competition, trying to balance things.
But this closer security relationship, especially anything hinting at a U.S. military footprint, isn't universally popular inside Panama, is it? What's the domestic reaction been like?
That's crucial context. No, it hasn't been universally welcomed. There's definitely criticism, particularly from opposition lawmakers and some civil society groups.
What are their main arguments?
A big one is transparency. Critics feel the full details of these agreements haven't been made public, sparking worries about sovereignty and, what the long-term commitments really are.
And there have been actual protests.
Yes, protests have occurred in several cities. The sentiment driving them seems rooted in that historical sensitivity to foreign military presence, that Canal Zone history casts a long shadow.
So fears of repeating the past.
For some, yes. They worry this cooperation, however it's framed, could be a slippery slope back to foreign dominance, or getting caught up in bigger power struggles. Some protesters use language like camouflaged invasion. That shows the depth of feeling. It's a real political challenge internally for Panama. Okay, so pulling it all together, looking at the big picture, what are the main strategic implications here for the U.S., for Panama, for the region?
Well, for the U.S., it's pretty clearly about reasserting influence and operational capability in a strategically vital area, especially with great power competition heating up. Securing that canal access and having forward operating locations is a big advantage.
And for Panama,
For Panama, it's a mix. They get enhanced security cooperation and potentially stronger backing from a major ally. But they also have to manage these intense domestic sensitivities around sovereignty and navigate being geographically positioned right where these global powers are competing.
so it's a complex balancing act for them.
Very much so. What we're witnessing is really a new phase in the region's dynamics, shaped by strategic needs, history, diplomacy, and frankly, power politics. It definitely feels like a significant shift, something with real consequences for regional stability, global trade, everything that flows through that canal. We've covered a lot: the agreement details, the base proposal pushback, the actual operational access, VMFA 312's role, the China factor, Panama's internal politics.
Absolutely. It's a multifaceted situation. The enhanced U.S. access and military activity clearly mark a strengthening partnership driven by shared interests, but also that wider geopolitical context. It really makes you think about the long-term trajectory here.
Indeed. Plenty to keep an eye on. Well, that wraps up our deep dive today on the U.S.-Panama defense relationship. Thanks for tuning in to the Military Breakdown podcast. If you found this discussion valuable, please do comment, share it with others who might be interested, and subscribe for future analysis. We've got plenty of other episodes exploring different military and strategic issues in our archives, too.